I'm going to go through the basics of soil and water, or the basics of audit training for soil and water conservation districts. So, always like to start out with what is an audit. So an audit is a formal examination of an organization or individual's accounts or financial situation. So essentially, in layman's terms, an audit is an in-depth look at your financial transactions throughout a fiscal year for an organization. And this can also include making sure that one, transactions are being accounted for, i.e. they're being spent where they're intended to be spent, but also as well to make sure there are no misuse of funds and that we have a smooth and balanced budget along the way. And there are different ways you can conduct an audit, but we're just going to go through our recommendations of the best way to do this today. One, from an employee perspective in preparing the audit, as well as commissioners that will do a self-audit on behalf of the district as well. Why is an audit required? In the South Carolina State Soil and Water Conservation Districts law, it is defined under section 48-9-1260, where commissioners shall provide for an annual audit of the accounts and disbursements of the district. So that is in statute, and that is a requirement of every soil and water conservation district. Why does an audit matter? One, due diligence, ensuring that money is going where it's intended to go. Again, all conservation districts are subdivisions of state government. Therefore, we are accountable to the public funds we receive between state, county, grant, or other partners who entrust in us in doing the great conservation work that we do. So doing this ensures that due diligence. It also provides for accountability as well as transparency. And one of the things I want to make clear is every conservation district is subject to the South Carolina Freedom of Information Act, i.e. FOIA. So if anybody has a question about financial transactions or where money is being spent, we have to report that and be diligent on that too, to our constituents and the public. So there are two types of audits that districts can undertake, a true audit or a self-audit. So what is a true audit? A true audit is a financial audit conducted by a certified professional accountant, CPA. This is the recommended method for a conservation district to conduct an audit. Having a third party to review your books removes any perceived conflicts of interest that may be perceived from the public. A use of a CPA may involve an expense from a conservation district to conduct an audit. And also there will still be time that'll be dedicated from the employee or a conservation district commissioner to provide records for the CPA to review or answer any questions or help resolve any disputes that there may be. So there would still be time dedicated from a conservation district if you still use a CPA. Again, we heavily recommend using a third party. Some districts do use a CPA. Some are volunteers on their board. Some they actually pay. Some are actually a member of their board. But majority of our conservation districts conduct what we call a self-audit, which is an alternative to doing a true audit. And a self-audit is where two board members, other than the treasurer and chair, perform a complete review of the status of the finances of the district, including a close examination of the checking and saving account records. So this is where most of our conservation districts are doing their audits, is by doing it through a self-audit process. And so today we're going to go through how can we best prepare for that self-audit from an employee side, as well as a commissioner executing that, but also as well, the stuff that you would do to prepare for a self-audit. If you are still doing a true audit, this will be extremely helpful to a CPA to conduct a self-audit along the way. So when should audits occur? So the fiscal year runs for state government and for subdivisions of state government from July 1st to June 30th. So all audits should take place after July 1st of every year. So all transactions for the fiscal year can be captured and recorded properly. So after June 30th, that is the last day of the fiscal year, the budget year, That's when you want to start preparing for your audit to ensure you're capturing everything throughout that fiscal year. To note, there might be cases where a county, city, federal entity, a grant, or other funding entity may have a different fiscal year that you'll need to consider. The reason I bring that up, several of you have federal grants that you have to track by the federal fiscal year. So just keep that in mind as you go forward and you track your financials throughout the year. So we're going to go through first the employee role in an audit, and then we're going to go through the commissioner's role in an audit. So I like to think of things monthly when I look at things financially, and I heavily recommend as a conservation district and as an employee that you look at it in the same light in terms of tracking your financials. So what is crucial throughout the year is to maintain accurate financial records throughout the fiscal year. These can be digital, print, or both, but you just need to make sure they're secure. And what I mean by that is if you're using digital records, make sure they're password protected, but make sure you have that password locked somewhere in a safe box or somewhere else that a commissioner can access if needed. But also if these are print, make sure they're in a locking filing cabinet just for protection of those accounts. And really what we're trying to do is prevent someone from utilizing accounts of the district that they could use somewhere else for ill intent. It's just protecting not personal information, but the conservation district checking banking accounts information to keep it protected. So this will be anything from checking, savings, grants, other accounts. I know several districts keep a separate account for, say, rental equipment. You want to make sure you're accounting for that as well. Anything that has a district tie, district dollar, you need to be making sure you're keeping accurate records of. Also critical from an employee perspective is to maintain constant communication with your treasurer and your chair on the status of deposits and expenditures and other financial needs of the conservation district. You know, don't wait till your monthly meeting to bring up a concern, a question, or an issue. That's why you have your chair. That's why you have your treasurer. Contact them and get in touch with them if you have a question or concern, and make sure you get it addressed before you get to your meeting. Don't wait until your meeting for concerns to be addressed. Always provide a monthly financial report for your board and their monthly meetings. And throughout that time, and whenever you provide a monthly report or a financial report, you should always have your treasurer and chair verify and sign off on any monthly bank statements that are provided and any financial report that an institution may provide. The reason and why you're providing that to them for their information to make sure they're aware of those transactions, of what's going on between deposits and expenditures, and that they recognize that. And it's a good idea to give that to them maybe before the meeting starts so that they have time to review it, whether it's a few days before, so that if they have any questions, they can come to you as the employee to get clarification or ask questions. But it is good to have that for your sake for documentation. Make sure you file that away so that you keep that with your documentation for your audit down the road. For expenditures, it is great to have documentation for your treasurer and chair to sign off that gives you authorization to pay out an expenditure. So for example, even though the district treasurer may sign a check for an expenditure, let's say it's to pay for the mobile irrigation lab equipment for Aiken Soil and Water district, that treasurer may sign off on that check, but it's good to maybe have a blank statement that says, Melanie Scholl authorized the Aiken Soil and Water District to pay out an expenditure of $3,000 related to this grant to pay out a producer. So that way you have that documentation that, yes, we've been given this authorization by the board through our budget, and this is where it's being pulled out of. Again, it's just accountability and makes it easy for documentation purposes to know when that money goes out, you can track where it goes from one point to the end. It's also a great idea to create a summary sheet for expenditures and deposits to correspond with your statements and financial reports. that match that detail that also is more of a summary. And I have an example of that we're going to go through on the next slide. And this can document the transaction type. This can document the transaction amount and the purpose for the transaction. So again, you're answering all the questions ahead of time. What are we doing? Is this a deposit, an expenditure? How much and why are we depositing this? And why are we expending these dollars? Always keep receipts and any deposit slips for your statements and justifications that can go along with your packets and with these matching summary sheets. And that helps to follow along and show, yes, that money went exactly where it need to. So here I use this as an example. Shanda, I'm picking on Richland a little bit here, but this is just an example of a summary sheet I created. We do this at DNR for every month for our P card statements, but it can be done the same for an account of any sort. So you have up here the conservation district, what the bank name is, and this could be anything, or this could be a ledger report of some sort monthly, but also the account number, and in parentheses, what kind of account that is, whether it's an operating, a savings, or equipment account, or grant account. But what you'll notice here, we have what purchase date was, vendor, amount, description of items, transaction purpose, expenditure or deposit. And what this does, if you take your bank statement and you itemize this out on this sheet of paper of the date, vendor, who it was, like let's say the state of South Carolina, $25,000 this month was deposited. The description of that is the state aid to conservation districts. The purpose of that is our annual allocation to the district, and it was a deposit. That's very easy to read without typing it out very extraneously. And the same for expenditures. Like we have this example for Office Max of $120 for a wall calendar and pens. What is the purpose? Wall calendar for office to organize district activities and pens for office supplies. So it can be something that simple. And at the bottom, we have options for your chair and your treasurer to sign off on that as well with statements as we go along. So again, this isn't necessarily required, but this would be a great thing to add along if you don't have that. And this is something we can share with you all as well. And you can modify this. This does not have to follow this format. You can create your own. But again, this just makes it easy at the end of the year for your monthly statements to follow along here and to match these up for your commissioners. So the other thing is we also highly recommend creating a checklist for the audit process for your commissioners to follow and sign off. What we recommend is create a checklist. Start with your budget and accounts, as well as other needs for the district that you would like to include into your audit, and take your deposits, take your expenditures, take your different state bank accounts that you may have, list those out and list out key things that need to be followed along, but also as well, look at any reporting requirements you may have for a grant, a county, municipality, or other partner that they may view as important to get to them, and include that into the package. So you're utilizing the time wisely of your commissioners as they go in and they do these audits, that you're knocking it all out at one fell swoop. So heavily recommend working with your commissioners to create an audit checklist. One, ensure it's a format that they like, ensure that they understand what that checklist looks like, and that everything that is important financially to your conservation district is established. We've already talked with the training committee about doing a future workshop to assist in developing an audit checklist too, as well, that you can take as a starting point to your commissioners as well. But we have a couple of examples. I want to thank Nana and Shanda for sharing some examples for us here. So this is Horry County's audit checklist that they utilize for their audit year. And what you'll notice is they have their different accounts between their operating, their grants, and as well as some other expenditures that they're trying to make sure that they're hitting on between workers' compensation, bonding, and tort liability insurance. And what they have is where each commissioner, not each commissioner, 3 commissioners conduct their audits. They initial by every line where they can go through every stack here and ensure everything is being addressed throughout there. Nana, do you have anything you'd like to add to this as a high level? Okay. Hearing none, so just wanted to show this to y'all. It's just one example. Again, simple one pager, can add comments, recommendations, and then where they sign off on this as well. Okay, and then here we have Richland Soil and Water Conservation District for their audit checklist as well. And you'll see it's a little different. Not every district is different, just like you have different priorities of what you do in conservation. Your accounting and auditing needs are going to be different by every conservation district throughout the state. So again, you can see where they have their operating, their credit card, their PayPal or payroll, other partner funds as well that they utilize, that they go through. And what this does, this just ensures that that the commissioners that are conducting the audits are truly looking at everything they need to make sure they're satisfying their audit requirements for that district. Again, just helps you keep organized. So just a couple of do's and don'ts. As we always say, as a conservation district employee, do not sign off on any financial transaction, audit report, audit checklist, or statements. This is a role of the Soil and Water Conservation District commissioners, not the employees. So the part that you are supposed to do is just ensure when the audit occurs that everything is organized, easy to follow. Also, be available for questions for your auditor. So day of the audit, be there. If they have a question, make sure you can answer it. If there's something you need to follow up on, make a note, make sure you follow up on it, and follow what your commissioners are asking you to do so that you can clear up any questions or concerns there may be. Okay, so we're going to dive into the commissioner role in the audit. So commissioner monthly expectations, it is heavily recommended throughout the year and at every monthly board meeting that you look into your financial reports and information hard. And what I mean by that is in great detail. This is not something you need just to skim over. You need to understand exactly where every dollar, every penny is going from a deposit perspective and an expenditure perspective. The employees that you have working for you are depending on you as a commissioner for guidance and direction. So at your monthly meetings, when you receive financial reports, do not approve them, only take them as information, because if you approve a financial report, you are approving those transactions without them having been properly audited. So take them as information only. And it is also best if you see issues throughout the month or you have questions, address them and fix them as you see them. Don't let them drag out to the end of the year. If you're in September, address it in September and October. Don't wait until July when your audit's coming in to try to reconcile it. Get ahead of the curve and get those addressed. And a lot of times it's something very simple if there is an issue that you can get resolved, but it's better to get it on the front end. So for monthly expectations, it is good for the chair and treasurer to sign off on monthly documentation, statements, justification, and anything else related to the financials of the conservation district. This ensures that you are reviewing those statements, accounts, expenditures monthly. Also, as well, it allows you that if you see an issue, you're able to help assist your employee in resolving that issue. One of the things I heavily recommend, especially for an auditing perspective, is provide your employee in writing what the issue is that you see, your expectations for it to be resolved. The reason why that is that gives your employee clear instructions as to what your expectations are to fix that issue and to bring it forward by the next board meeting. Whatever you do, do not give your employee signatory authority for checks or payments. The role of the employee is strictly to prepare payments and to track financials. They are not to sign checks or to distribute any funds on behalf of the conservation district without board approval at all. So just keep that in mind as you go forward. So the commissioner role in a self-audit, when it comes time for your self-audit, choose at least 2 commissioners that are not the treasurer or chair to conduct the audit. And we also see in other districts where they have 3 commissioners that do this, like in Horry County, or they have an outside constituent that is willing to serve to come in and just be an outside set of eyes on the financials. And that's also acceptable as well. Just make sure you're protecting the account information, i.e. the accounting codes or the accounting numbers. Just make sure you're blocking those out and that you're only looking at expenditures. And if you have statements, that you're cutting out that information that could be sensitive. The employee should have documentation for your audit organized. They should also be available for questions and assisting with the audit process. Your employee should not sign off on any audit related documentation. That is your role as a commissioner, is to sign off on that. Your employee is only there to keep information organized and to present it to you and to answer any questions you may have. And also audit every conservation district account. Anything that has a conservation district dollar tied to it that you are responsible for, whether it's checking, savings, a grant, equipment account, all of that needs to be included into your audit. Just as, again, I want to stress, as we are stewards of conservation, we're also stewards of the public dollars and trusts that we are given to manage this. So every account must be audited. And it is highly recommended that you develop and follow an audit checklist. Work with your employee to develop this audit checklist. One, make sure it's something that you like, that you agree with, but also as well something that's easy for the conservation district employee to organize and to make it easy flow for you as you conduct your audit. If you find issue with your financials through your audit, document the issue and work to resolve that issue immediately. If you have an issue, we recommend that you verify the issue has been resolved and that you document the resolution that was conducted for your audit file. So that showcases, if you're ever questioned under the Freedom of Information Act, hey, we noticed you had this financial issue back in April. You called it in your audit. This is what we found, and this is how we resolved that issue. So you're accountable in terms of what you did to make sure you shored up the books appropriately. Do not conduct your audit in a fast manner. What I mean by that is take your time, make sure you understand everything with your conservation district financials and that everything is reconciled appropriately. If it takes you a day, it takes you a day. If it takes you 4 hours, it takes you 4 hours. Don't just rush through this. Make sure you understand it. Make sure you ask questions. Make sure everything is as completed as what you feel is appropriate here for your employee as well as for the district. So what to look for in a self-audit: ensure that the statements, expenditures, receipts, deposits, and documentation match and balance. Review all financial approvals, documentation, and transactions to ensure that they have followed your budget, number one, as well as any criterion you have for spending and deposits as well. And again, I want to stress this: tracking your financials monthly helps to make this smooth at the end of the year so that you address those issues if any come up throughout the month or throughout the year, rather than wait until the end of the year. If you are not comfortable as a commissioner with the audit, with where it's at, do not sign off on it until you feel it is resolved. However, make sure you help your employee through any situation that needs to be resolved. Don't let them fend for their own. Give them guidance, give them information of what you're needing so that you can make sure that it gets resolved, but then you also help them provide documentation of how that issue was resolved for the district, for them, and for the good of the Soil and Water Conservation District. So after the audit, what's required? The Conservation District should notify our office at South Carolina DNR that the annual audit has been completed. This can be done by sending a letter to me to my office or through signing the application for state appropriation. Some districts send us their results of their audit, what they found. Some districts just sign the aid application that it's been done. We'll accept either or. We do like to know what that an audit was completed. So that's why whenever you sign off on receiving your aid funds, you are certifying as a treasurer and as a chairperson that we have followed the state statute that I referred on the front end and conducted our audit in full compliance. So with that, that's what I have as a high level.